Hello, this is Work From Home, the podcast that helps you stay connected, productive and sane while working remotely. I'm Harry, and today I sat down with Louise Deverell-Smith of Daisy Chain. Daisy Chain's described as a free online platform for parents where they can match and connect with flexible employers to enhance their careers and work-life balance. And Louise is a mum of 3 and has placed a ton of people in remote and kind of flexible working jobs and roles over the last couple of years. And so I thought she would be a really awesome person to speak to kind of talk about, you know, how successful remote workers are kind of balancing that family life with their job. We talked about a couple of things. We talked about structuring your remote working day when you've got kids at home, which is definitely something that a lot of people we're hearing are struggling with. And Louise, obviously, as a mum of 3, has got a lot of experience here, but she's also worked with a lot of people that she's placed in remote positions over the years. So I really wanted to ask her about that. We also discussed this idea of a home-life balance and the importance of communication within kind of your family and your home life. So you can find more information about Louise and the work she's doing with Daisy Chain at daisy-chain.com. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. All right, on to our interview with Louise. What parts of working in an office do we forget when we're adapting to working from home? Like, what are the kind of big differences and what is it easy to sort of forget about?
Yeah. Well, I suppose the big difference is having that one-to-one connection with people. It's called the water cooler chats, isn't it?
Yep.
We are missing out on all of that. Lots of people enjoyed the commute in the morning because that might have been the only time that they get a bit of time on their own and can kind of, you know, parents, for example, you know, I know my husband used to love just getting on the train.
Yep, totally.
Just kind of saying bye.
Yep.
So that's changed. So he's now started having his morning walk instead. And at the same time, so you've got to try and keep that routine. I think the other thing you miss, I think lots of people are missing out just going and getting a coffee and getting their sandwiches at lunch and kind of just looking after yourself for a bit. You really do. This being at home and being with the children and your partner or your dog or whoever it is pretty intense. So I think a lot of people are really missing just being able to go out and be on their own and just
totally.
a bit of their own time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just zonk. And what about sort of, so you mentioned kind of that thing you do at the end of the day, you'll sort of make a plan for the next day as a family and like where things are going to fit. So I wonder if you could speak to a bit more about structure and how you kind of can structure your work day when you've got kids at home.
So I've kind of taken over schooling, mainly because my husband's working full time. He's decamped into my son's room because he likes that room. There's a sunny spot. He likes that. So he's in there. My son sits next to him and does his schoolwork. And the night, like this I said before, the night before we plan what we really want to do. And some days I might just say, I'd actually really like to go for a walk on my own at like 3:00 because by then I've had enough. And we all say what we'd like to do. Then we get up and I always write a list. There's only normally 3 things that I'd like to get done in the day. And it's always kind of focused around my work. And I don't want to have a long list because I've always written lists, but my list might be 15 things on my list. Now it's only 3 because I know that's realistic. It's just, we have to kind of stick to a plan during the day. The boys have got, with school, they have got a timetable, which we don't stick to exactly, but as long as they've done everything on the timetable. And what I've noticed is that they need a lot more breaks than what adults need. Their concentration is not as good as ours, and especially if they're online and in a Zoom lesson, they really my middle son, after 15 minutes, he's done. My eldest can go a bit longer. So we have to remember that. But also it's trying to just keep that structure that we've always had. So we always get up, we'll always have our breakfast, we'll always get dressed. Although my son sometimes has his pajamas on under his school uniform, so we'll let him. He's 7, so I'll let that go. But I have to. So he has a onesie and he puts his hood up over the onesie and then he has his jumper over the top. So it's like, oh God, Fred, pull your hood down at least. And for me, I have to get up and get dressed, be ready. And I kind of want to keep the same routine going as what it was before. Otherwise, I feel like the children will probably suffer and think, what is going on? And distractions, I think, is quite key. I find that I can probably do like an hour's work in one sitting, but after that, and I have to kind of turn everything off my phone. I can't look at Instagram or Facebook because I'll just get distracted. So distractions are really important. And then also keeping fit and for your well-being is massive. And I've noticed that more now than what I did before. It just makes such a difference, like having a walk on your... I mean, we've got a dog, luckily, because I feel like if we didn't have the dog, I wouldn't have an excuse to go.
Yep.
And they get like getting the children to do the same thing, because I've worked out my children are really lazy. And so if they've got a choice to say, do you want to sit and watch a film or play on it or go in the garden, they'll always just want to play on the Xbox or watch TV. So we tried Joe Wicks for a bit, but it ended up me doing that for about 3 days. And then, I think just keeping your structure and your routine, but also at the same time keep remembering that what we go through is just not that normal working from home.
So being a bit forgiving to yourself, really.
Yeah, definitely.
I would love for you to speak to just kind of this concept of a home-life balance, because actually that's something that is consistent, not just with this current pandemic, but life as remote work generally. And we often talk about work-life balance, but you're kind of framing it as home-life balance. I wonder if you could just talk to that a bit and what a healthy home-life balance is. I
think it's really dependent on the family, and I think families just have to be flexible on what works for them. And it changes as your children get older. It's a lot more intense in the early years for families, for when the children are young. And the older they get, the easier it gets, the more expensive they become. But they do get a bit more independent, and it's a lot easier for parents to, I suppose, get a bit of their own life back. But I think having open communications within a family is really important, especially with... I've got 3 children, so they're all very, very different, and they don't all want to do the same things. So let's not all make them. They're all individuals, and I'm very different to my husband, and so there's no point us all being the same. And I think that's why with Daisy Chain is what I like about what we do, is that we are saying to the employers, the candidates that you'll meet via us, they're not all the same. So I think because the majority of our candidates are mums, lots of people just think, they just want part-time. And actually they don't. The majority want something full-time but flexible. So we're not saying less, we're saying full-time, but just could you be a bit flexible on what time they start or finish or where they work from? This is what we were saying before. So now it's like, they can do it. We say that it's the jigsaw of life. Work and family life have to kind of fit together somehow. And if you're not always going to get it right, and also it can change within the day, you think you've got it nailed in the morning, I've got everything sorted, and then bang, something will happen. It'll normally be school ringing to say Freddie's cut his lip open or something. So it all can just change so quickly. But just, I think as long as everyone is open and talking about what they really want within the family. And when you're looking for a new job, that's, we say have a checklist, I love a list, obviously, of what's really important to you and what you're you really want and what you could be, but then what you could also be flexible on. And that's something you could go to employers with now and say, look, I'm open to working 3 days a week, or I'm open to a job share. I think as long as you're saying to future employees and current employees, look, I am flexible if you can be flexible. That's the main thing.
So thanks again very much to Louise. You can find more information about her at daisy-chain.com. Definitely encourage you to check that out. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast if you enjoyed it today. And if you did, we'd really appreciate you sharing it with one other person that you think would also find it useful. It really does go a long way to helping us reach more people working remotely. Thanks very much for listening.